Next off the rank is Elmer Funke Kupper, the CEO and Managing Director of the Australian Securities Exchange, to talk about implementing targets with teeth.
Well, thank you, Lee, for the introduction, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me for a couple of minutes. I was asked to share our experience in implementing stretch target around gender diversity, and to be honest, I at times find the work we do with the male champions very frustrating, because we make changes in our organizations and then very little happens with the results. Every now and then, though, we come across changes that do make a real difference when it comes to gender diversity. And we've got three such experiences. The first one you just heard about flexibility. It was when we implemented all roles flex that we removed in one step all assumptions about what's possible, and it simply says everything is possible. The second breakthrough was to insist that we have a balanced shortlist for every single senior role that we're recruiting and appointing managers for. And we had some terrific new skills joining the company. And in fact, this year so far, this calendar year, slightly over half of our senior appointments have been women in what is a notoriously male industry. The third positive experience was around setting stretch targets. And the idea was very, very simple. Can we make a material difference in gender diversity at all levels in the organization? And to get to this, we set ambitious targets, unreasonable targets even for where we were at the time. And then we tied them to incentives. When we did this, what we found is that the organization moved much more than I would have expected. And of course, in some ways, it's obvious. We all work with targets every day. We tie them to incentives, and we tend to get results. And so it's true for this as well. There's a couple of lessons that we learned when we started to do the obvious and set targets. The first is that we aimed high. We decided that the only acceptable target to start with would be 40% across all levels of the organization. And the reason is 40% is the lowest level at which you can claim to have a balanced organization, because the ratio is usually somewhere in the range of 40 to 60. The second thing we learned is to give the targets teeth. Initially, when we started this, I believed that gender diversity and even things like staff engagement was all about management potential, the ability of someone to take on a larger team as they go through their careers. I was wrong. I believe that these things are about performance, and they're about today, not tomorrow. So what we did is we combined three targets: workplace health and safety, engagement, and diversity. And we announced to our leadership team that at the end of the year, we'll run our normal process, but then we'll step back and we'll look at these targets and what you've achieved, and we can move your bonuses up or down by 20%, just for this reason. What is really interesting is when we announced that, the only people that came to me to object to that idea were our female executives. I think the men didn't dare to come to me, frankly, to object. They quietly objected or submitted. And the reason was that they did not believe that their male counterparts would deliver. But thankfully, we've made good progress, and they are today delivering. The third lesson is to create absolute transparency about these numbers, not just in our annual reports, where you can read them, of course, but also in the KPIs for every senior manager, and in our daily, weekly, and monthly dashboards. Gender diversity is one of the many metrics that we look at. So how do we end up? Well, the first thing that we noticed when we introduced the 40% target, of course, is that the conversations changed immediately. In fact, conversations started that simply weren't happening before. Then we found that management started to look at the issues, worry about the data, and take action. And as we stand here today, there is a risk that we might make most of our targets in this calendar year and get to 40% at most levels. All but one. I'm probably the only one who's going to fail, which is going to be slightly embarrassing. But it would still be a very good outcome, because 40% at all levels, and even the executive committee, we're now at 1/3. We have a long way to go, but I did not expect the company to move at this level. And one more interesting thing that we found when I looked at the numbers recently, because we focus on all these initiatives, by next month, out of the top 4 best paid people in our company, half of them will be women in very serious management jobs. So we're committed to this. I freely beg, borrow, and steal from my colleagues to get the other measures done. But if you're serious about this, then having a target is really not optional. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Elmer. I just wanted to ask, when you said to your staff, okay, your bonuses can go up or down by 20%, here's what your targets are, did you then give them strategic advice about how to achieve that, or were your staff then given autonomy and just to rely on their own initiative and creativity to meet those targets?
It's a very good question. We introduced the targets after a couple of years of working with the male champions. If we had it done up front, I don't think anything would have happened, except we would have been paid less, which wouldn't have been so good. So we first of all worked on a whole bunch of initiatives, including all roles flexed, balanced shortlist for all executive roles. And then after a while, we said, now there's no more excuses, and now we're going to get very serious and tied to incentives.
So they had some tools already?
They already had the tools and no more excuses. So we did it after about 2 years.
Okay, Elmer, thank you very much.
Thank you.